Hey friends, before we jump into today's episode, I want to tell you about my brand new hangboard. I'm so stoked about it. It's called the Nug. This is a collaboration with Fictitious Climbing. I've had this hangboard design in my head for years. It's super portable. It's the best portable hangboard I've ever used. I'm obviously biased, but I designed it the way that I did for a reason. I use it for edge lifting and training. I use it to warm up at the crag every single time I go climbing. It weighs almost nothing. It weighs less than one climbing shoe, and I'm super proud of how it turned out. I would love it if you guys would check it out if you need something to warm up with at the crag or if you enjoy training. I made a short video talking about the design and everything I like about it. You can find it on the product page at fictitiousclimbing.com, or you can get there through my website at thenuggetclimbing.com. Just look for the Nug at the top of the page. I hope you check it out and enjoy today's episode. Hello, friends. Welcome to the Nugget Climbing Podcast, and welcome back to Fundamentals Season 2. This is Episode 2. I'm joined by my co-host, Jesse Firestone. Hey, Jesse.
Howdy.
And today's topic is how to train on a spray wall. So last time we talked about how to climb on a training board, which, if you missed that one, was more focused on light-up boards like the moon board, tension board, kilter board, etc. And this time we are talking more about kind of two sides of spray walls, tips for setting one up at home if you have a home wall, and ways to make that more effective and how to train on it, and then how to get the most out of a spray wall in a commercial gym or a shared space.
Right.
It's kind of two different sides to that there. So
right, all of board climbing that doesn't fall under the light up boards, pretty much.
Yeah.
I guess, which is a lot of very different things. But I would also say, if you jump to this episode, you probably should listen to the board climbing episode too.
Yeah.
Because a lot of stuff in there I think still applies, and a lot of stuff in this one will probably apply.
Yeah, we tried to make these complementary. We're not just going to talk about the same things
right.
without lights. Yeah.
Right.
We didn't come up with an icebreaker. What is the best spray wall you've ever climbed on?
Ooh. Well, I mean, I'm super biased. The best spray wall I've ever climbed on. I wish I had climbed in like more gyms with 6 spray walls, because I'm definitely aware of a lot of them, but I have to say lately I've mostly walked past them.
What is okay, let's tweak it. What is the dream spray wall that you would love to go try?
Oh man. I don't have a good answer for that icebreaker, unfortunately. I will say there's like, I know the new Portland Rock Gym has like a slab spray wall of like all low pro
that's cool.
volumes, and I don't know what angle it goes to, but I think it's like for like comp training and stuff, and that is so outside my wheelhouse that I just think it sounds really fascinating and like difficult.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. That'd be cool.
What about you?
I want to go climb at Cats.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
See, that's a good answer.
Classic.
That's how you know that I'm not a good training junkie, because I'm just like, I don't know, man.
Yeah, I mean that's probably a very attainable goal for me. I've always thought it looked really cool. There's a lot of lore around that gym. I've seen like a lot of early, I saw a lot of early clips of people, really strong people who I admired and looked up to training there before spray walls were as prevalent. And I was like, what is that? That's crazy. But then there was like the bubble wrap project, like maybe still the hardest plastic climb that's ever been done, or who knows.
Probably up there.
Probably up there. Yeah.
Yeah, that thing has some legendary like history for sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I just want to go see it. I think it'd be...
Okay, I thought while you answered, and I came up with one, which is, I don't know if you've seen this, but the Wedge, the Wedge, the YouTube channel.
Oh yeah, I'm a huge fan.
They were climbing at, I think, Dan Varian's house, and he has like a spray wall that's built like a barrel.
Yeah.
It has like a flat surface, and then it has like 2, not arêtes, but like, how would you describe that?
Yeah, it's really hard to describe.
Yeah, they're back at like maybe a 45-degree angle from the main wall, but they still overhang. So it's basically like a compression spray wall.
Yeah.
Well, I think it was like all wood holds too, maybe.
I think it is. It's really pretty. It's really beautiful. He always climbs on it barefoot, I think.
Oh yeah.
So there's no shoe rubber. It's like a white wall with like really nice wooden holds all over it.
I don't think I'll ever try to climb on that spray wall, because it seems like a private.
It's like in one of his spare bedrooms. Yeah.
But maybe I'll try to build something like that because it seems really cool.
It's really cool. Yeah, I remember watching that wedge episode. I'll link to it for folks, but it's Dan and Aiden climbing together, Aiden Roberts, and both those guys have been on the show. Is that a
little humble brag?
It's just helpful context for people.
Yeah.
And yeah, basically he created a wall where you could do two different widths of compression, but then also do these like kind of 3-dimensional shoulder moves and stuff like that with like the different contours of the wall. And you could also climb on it as a flat wall if you just stay on the panels that are further out, which is hard to describe, but it's pretty clever, like pretty creative design.
That jumps right into, I didn't have this as a tip, but I think that is a big difference between the light up boards and your average spray wall is like, even when you talk about Cats is just basically it's a gym. It's got a bunch of different features and terrain, right? But it's a spray wall set over the whole thing. So some spray walls are just a flat plane, just like the tension board that we're sitting next to right now. But some spray walls also just cover a bunch of gym terrain, or any overhanging wall. And that's why I was saying the PRG slab one is kind of interesting because like usually a spray wall is not that off angle. It's usually steeper. And I find from a technical point of view, flat plane walls to just be, that's like the best and worst part of the light up boards is they don't have any terrain, right? So you can still practice a lot of technique, but there's no like getting your body into the space, or like utilizing the fact that when holds are like around a corner, they become more positive and you can like have a more neutral wrist angle and all that kind of stuff. And that's like something about training on a spray wall that you really can't get from a board. So if you have a board and a spray wall available, I feel like maybe using the spray wall more, if it has varied terrain, is probably like a big training benefit just in terms of the technique you'd get from it.
Right. Just climbing on a variety of features and angles and things like that.
Yeah. And on commercial sets, people probably notice this, like if you have like a vert wall and then a roof and then a vert wall, exiting the first vert into the roof, you're going to kind of do the same like 5 moves over and over and over. And then coming out of that roof into the next vert, you're going to kind of do the same moves over and over and over. And like in modern times, big volumes have really let route setters kind of change those rules, and it's different than it used to be. But it's still, the terrain really drives the technique that you can use a lot more than the holds do. And so with a flat plane, you're kind of limited, but with a spray wall, there might be a lot more options available.
Yeah, let's start there. I mean, we're going rogue a little bit, but that's totally fine. I think you have more tips around how to set up a home wall. I have some, but
a little bit.
Do you have any thoughts on what angles or sorts of home wall designs people should go for? I mean, obviously this is like largely dictated by your ability and also your space.
And budget, for sure. Budget. Yeah, I mean, if you're lucky enough to have a home wall in the first place, then your budget's probably driving a lot of it. But I think the biggest thing with like steepness and budget is just going to be to make sure, and we're probably going to talk about this a lot, but to just make sure that the set is appropriate for the steepness. Because like, it's kind of nice to have a board you can grow into. So even if a 40 is like really steep, you might want to go with that as long as you can afford holds that are going to be climbable on it for you. Mm-hmm. Versus if you set like a 10-degree wall or a 20-degree wall, it's a lot harder to like grow with that board for a long time. It might serve you in the short term. And I think your board and bend was like 25 or something like that.
I had 2 8-foot wide walls. One was 40 and one was 20.
Okay. Yeah. So the 40, yeah, it's great. The 20, like I'm sure, like you can't take it that far.
Right.
Even when you are climbing at hard projects at Smith.
It was helpful because I was climbing at Smith, but I do feel like I did get something out of it, but I do feel like I kind of maxed it out. I did my heinous crimp projects on it and then just didn't really climb on it after that. But it was really nice to have an option to do more aerobic capacity and warm up a little more gently and things like that.
Yeah, that variety of 2 angles right there is like a very nice thing. So you had 2 8-foot vertically or 2 8-foot wide panels.
8-foot wide.
That's pretty awesome home setup.
Yeah, and that's something I want to talk about later. Like that whole setup, building that whole wall. It was freestanding. I designed the whole thing. I painted it. It was like $900.
Wow.
So it definitely is possible to like get creative and have a sick home wall, but
Keep it low budge.
Don't want to get ahead of ourselves too much.
I mean, I think we're kind of jumping into this is a mishmash, but my first like tip bucket is just setup considerations. So I think we're kind of like there. And one of the first things is like a mix of good and bad holds, a mix of textures. So like some wood holds can be nice. Some poly can be nice. I also really like the old resin holds if they're not chipped. Those are pretty nice to climb on. They're kind of like in between wood and polyurethane.
Mm-hmm. Like the old polyester that have fiberglass in them. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. They're really ugly and they wouldn't like do well in a gym now just because they look totally 90s. But they're pretty nice to climb on if they're not broken. Yeah, and then as far as, from the same vein of like what you have available, in the case of your home wall, you were really like turbo focused. You were climbing a Smith a lot. And so you had kind of Smith-esque projects on your home wall. And I think that can work. But I think you also want to be mindful of like leaning too far into what you want to train for your local area and just hammering that one thing all the time instead of like making sure your home wall does something to kind of balance out the climbing that you're getting a lot of. So like we live in Leavenworth. It's very compression-y, like physical, burly kind of style. And like I do more crimping on the board here than I did when I lived in Bend, where I had a lot more like fingery projects and a lot more like hard towing in and like minimal kind of climbing.
Yeah.
There I had like a little bit more of like a physical kind of nature to my spray wall. Part of that by design and part of that also by just like, my fingers were really tired. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do like more thuggy climbing. Whereas here I'm kind of like, well, my fingers are the only thing that's like not tired. So maybe I'll crimp on the board today.
Yeah. Like complement your local area with your design of your board a little bit.
Yeah. Don't go like all in on just trying to train for the proj. It's definitely nice to have a little balance on your home wall. And then another thing was, I think used holds wind up on like home walls a lot and also on spray walls, which makes sense because they're really cheap. But I don't think that a spray wall in a gym, I think really shouldn't be just a place to dump holds that you don't like. I think we're moving away from that.
Yeah.
As like a climbing culture. And then for a home wall, if that's your budget and that's the time you have available, it definitely works. But I think the lack of texture on used holds, especially like if they're used urethane holds, it just sucks to climb on. It's kind of brutal to climb on. Like one thing that's really nice about a home wall is that the texture sticks around for a lot longer.
Yeah.
So like new holds are a huge investment, but also they'll last forever on a home wall. Whereas in a gym, they burn out in a few months.
Right. They're getting like 100th or 1,000th of the traffic.
Probably. Yeah. I think orders of magnitude less than that even in some gyms. Like think of like Seattle bouldering project.
Yeah. Totally.
Yeah. So that was what I had for setup considerations. And then we talked a little bit about like steepness and stuff too. Do you have any other thoughts on setup?
Not really. Most of my stuff is really about how to train on a spray wall or home wall.
Sick.
Yeah. Should I dive into my first one?
Yeah.
Okay. So I'm going to riff on this for quite a while. I've got a lot of thoughts here. But my first tip for how to train on a spray wall or home wall is to really build yourself a repertoire of really good climbs. And really good climbs, means whatever that means to you. But either climbs you really enjoy or climbs that will teach you something or help you towards your goals. I personally feel super overwhelmed when I climb on a new spray wall and like taking time to, either set or find a selection of climbs that I really like, but then saving them somewhere where I can reference back to them and kind of build my sessions around those. I'm maybe trying new projects every session or every other session or something, or trying new warm-ups just to mix things up. But I'm kind of building everything around this baseline of like really good climbs. The Stoked app is really good for that. Stoked is spelled Stokt. I have no affiliation with them. I just think it's a really cool app. Basically allows you to use your spray wall like a light up board. There's no lights obviously, but it's really cool for setting, for storing problems and things like that. And then, your whole community, if you're at a commercial gym, they're probably already using it and you can log in and find cool climbs and stuff. But I think the magic of a spray wall is the focus that it can give you and the ability that it can give you to master specific movements and climbs. That's what I really love it for. I mean, you could do this on a board too, I guess, but commercial climbs go away. And outdoor projects, you probably don't want to give a ton of skin to going back time and time again and trying to master something that you've already climbed. But I think a spray wall or home wall is such a good opportunity to do perfect repeats and to take climbs that that you've done and you've checked the box, but come back to them and continue learning from them.
Yeah.
I think I've always felt like the best I've ever climbed is after a cycle of doing a lot of that, like a lot of perfect repeats combined with, limit level projects and things like that.
Yeah, a lot of honing.
Yeah. Let's see, what else do I have here?
Yeah, that totally makes sense.
But yeah, I think a lot of the improvement of our movement on the wall as climbers comes from refining and trying to perfect either individual moves or a series of moves. Yeah,
for sure.
Let's see.
I was going to say I don't know if the word benchmark is trademarked, but we definitely have on the spray wall that I climb at the most right now, which is at like our friend's house. I have like a list or a playlist or whatever it is of like, the best of each grade. And for sure, like every time I climb there's a couple things on that list that I'm going to climb.
Yeah.
And all the other home walls that I've climbed on like regularly, I've kind of had that same thing. I think that's kind of what you're saying is like, you have, the V4 that's like the best one on the wall, and like the V5 that's the best one, or like, this is the V5 with the like slopers that you kind of shoulder into, and this is the V5 that's like kind of a crimp ladder, it has like a cool toe in or whatever. The ones that sort of stick as being emblematic of that style on that board, and then also when people come over, you kind of have something to give them instead of just throwing them in the deep end, because without the lights, it's like really hard to bring people around if you're climbing on a home wall.
Yeah.
And for sure at a spray wall, same thing. Like at the spray wall at the gym here, like I have the climbs that I'm sort of like, these ones are cool, and I want to do those when I climb on the board because they just feel fun.
Right. And yeah, I was thinking about it and I realized, or I kind of have the suspicion that most people that, spend most of their climbing time climbing at a commercial gym, they don't really ever get that. They're either climbing the new set, and as soon as they send something, even if they don't climb it well, it's good enough and they check the box and they move on, or they're doing the opposite, which is putting a ton of time into one project and like really perfecting the moves on one climb. But the spray wall is kind of the only place where you get a bit of both,
right?
Where you're doing like a decent amount of volume, but you're trying to perfect like all the climbs you warm up on, all the kind of second tier things that you use to ramp up to your project level.
Right.
Yeah, I've personally found a ton of benefit from that. So
can I say one other thing? This is responding to a different point you made, but as far as like perfecting movement, which I agree, a spray wall and a board as well, but the really magical thing about a spray wall for learning movement is being able to like kind of cluster holds. And so if it's a home wall, that's perfect because you can like put holds on if you want to do this. But on a well set spray wall that's super dense, a lot of the time they will have thought of this too, where it's like if there's a nice like 20 mil in cut crimp, there will be like a 10 mil in cut crimp the next bolt over, or even screwed in right next to it. Or maybe another pretty good one, but it's like a little slopier and it's like tilted another 10 degrees or whatever. And then you take those three holds and you kind of have three like permutations of the same thing. And if you do that with each hold on the climb, suddenly it goes from being like, I am trying to send this climb to I am just trying to like learn how to move through space in some way related to these sets of holds, but it becomes more about that terrain and more about how you exist on the wall. If you're just like, oh, this is like more of a side pull now I can like lean away from it a little bit, or I can like get in that heel more and like pull my chest closer to the wall or whatever it is. Those little permutations I think really offer a lot of insight into how movement works. And that's just something you really don't get that from commercial setting unless the setters are like really trying to set like thematic climbs where it's like the V6 and the V8 have the same kind of move right next to each other,
Totally. Yeah. And the other side of this, I'm just staying on the same thing, is it allows you to iterate. So if you have like, if you're a V10 climber and you have like a couple V8s that you love and you master them over the course of a training cycle, you can take like the two crux moves from the V8 and change what happens below that and change what happens above that and make like a sick V10, that builds on it, or swap out one of the footholds, or even if it's a home wall, take the same foothold, turn it a little bit, see what happens. It's really fun because it's just really good training, because training is systematic overload and it's really difficult to measure if you're just okay, I sent 3v6s today, but then they stripped the wall and they changed them. And now I'm climbing in a different zone because that's where the new set is. And it's not apples and apples. It's caves
Totally
and
different.
slabs or whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever it is.
Yeah.
So I really, at least for me personally, with my kind of like engineering mind, I really, really like that. I like to iterate, and I'll kind of like copy paste climbs that I really like and make 2 or 3 different versions of them that maybe share a couple moves or share all the same handholds and different footholds. Yeah. There's a lot you can do with that.
A lot of the time on the home wall that I climb on a lot, I think of that as like the crowd pleaser. You know, if I'm like trying to set something and I'm not sure like which way to take it, like I'll set the crowd pleaser and I'll make it really ergo and like fun and fair. And then I'll like reset the same series of climbs and like do all the like fucked up stuff that I was originally thinking about. You know what I mean? Like I try to get the like slightly easier, more fair one out of the way, and then like throw a curveball with like the other version. But it'll often have like the same move in the middle or like roughly the same combination of holds or whatever.
Yeah.
Because like you're not with commercial setting, they really are trying to create a product. And so it's a very, that makes it a very challenging job. But when you're setting on a spray wall for yourself or for others, or you're setting on a home wall for yourself or for others, like you can do whatever you want. You're not going to run out of space in the database of climbs. So it's totally fine to experiment like that.
Right. Things don't have to be fun either, or they don't have to like make sense to anyone else, or
true.
They don't have to flow a certain way. Yeah.
And you also don't have to, because it doesn't have lights, you don't have to save things to the database. You can just remember what the holds are on your project. That's also fine.
And we will be right back. This episode is brought to you by Tension Climbing. I've interviewed a lot of the world's best climbers on this podcast, and one thing that comes up again and again when I ask folks how they train or how they got so strong is board climbing. In fact, if I could go back in time and do one thing differently, I would have spent a lot more time seeking out and climbing on boards. The Tension Board 2 was developed from the ground up to be the singular most effective board for broad and incremental progression. These guys thought of everything. The hold styles and the difficulty of the holds on the TB2 is really varied. They have differences in textures between the wood and the plastic, which I think is realistic. Some rock is really grippy and some rock is really smooth and slick, and I find training on wood to be super helpful for that. But the one thing that really stands out to me about the TB2 is the footholds. A lot of them are small and precise. They have an element of directionality, and all of that means that you actually get to practice good footwork when you climb on the board, and you can learn a lot about how to move well on the board as well. It's super fun to train on, and I find it translates really well to outdoor climbing. I recently set some replicas on the TB2 for one of my projects in Rocky Mountain National Park. And after training on those replicas for several sessions, I was able to do the crux of one of my projects for the first time ever, my very first day at the boulder this season. And I was blown away. I couldn't believe it. I'm super stoked. And all of that is thanks to the TB2. I feel like I've barely scratched the surface. There's so many ways to train on this thing. It's just so cool. Head over to tensionboard.com/nugget to learn more about the Tension Board 2, or use the Tension app to find a TB2 at a gym near you. That's tensionboard.com/nugget to learn more about the TB2, or use the Tension app to find a TB2 near you. This episode is brought to you by Madrock. These guys have been killing it on the shoe front. I'm in a training phase right now, and I've been doing a hell of a lot of board climbing, and I've been trying out the Red Line Strap. These are really sick shoes from Madrock. I love the Drone 2.0 and the Drone CS. I've talked about those a lot, but I wanted to try out some of their other shoes, and I pretty immediately fell in love with the Red Line Strap. I love the simplicity of the shoe. It's a really elegant design. It's pretty sensitive compared to the drones, but it still gives me the support I need in all the right places. I like how pointy the toe is. I feel like I can really dig into small footholds on the board, and they've been really fun to climb in. Head over to madrock.com and enter code NUGGET for 10% off your first order. That's madrock.com and use code NUGGET for 10% off your first order of shoes, crash pads, and more. And now, back to the show. Cool. What's your next one?
More stuff about setting, which we're already kind of on, so I can go through some of my bullet points here. I think in terms of having a home wall, being able to set on it is just it's like root privileges in computer science, or it's like God mode basically. You can just do whatever you want, you know? Like being able to turn holds, add footholds, put things in and out, add hold clusters, all that stuff, and it just superpowers everything that we were just talking about, basically. And I think it can be used too much. There's definitely like an upper bound to how helpful it is to tweak things. So you want to kind of use it really sparingly. It's like if you know the cheat codes in a video game and you use them all the time, you're not going to learn how to play that video game at all.
Right.
You know what I mean? But pulling them out every once in a while, you might, just to make the session more fun or to like try to get better. Sometimes it can be functional. So when it comes to setting, if I'm climbing on a home wall, and actually this is pretty true. I even did this today, climbing on the tension board. I start basically all my sessions by setting a few problems, just because it gets my head in the space of like, what am I doing? I'm like trying to understand movement. And then on the home wall, you basically, the eternal struggle of the home wall owner who climbs alone a lot is they do not have enough stuff to climb. Like I've worked with a lot of people who have a home wall, and I think it's much more common that they struggle to have enough interesting stuff to climb than the opposite. And just getting in the habit of every time you go out there, assuming you have the time for it, you set like 3 boulders.
Yeah.
And they might not be the sickest boulders ever, and you don't even have to climb them on that session. But on that session where you have less time, being able to just have a list of boulders you haven't tried might be really helpful.
Yeah.
In conjunction with like the kind of benchmarks that you were talking about, because then you have like a nice mix.
Nice.
And if I'm not inspired, some of the things that I jump to is like movements that I'm thinking about lately. So like could be outdoor projects or just like something I saw in a YouTube video. And then combinations of holds that just look really fun for whatever reason. So like just aesthetically, I'll try to be like, okay, what are all the like fat pinches on this part of the board or this part of the wall? And like what's the minimum stuff I need to add to like link together all the cool pinches or whatever, things like that. And then another one, which I think I mentioned today to you, is like, I just try and just look at the board and I'm like, what's a hold that I have never grabbed or I like haven't grabbed in a long time? And I just try to set a cool boulder that like, features that hold in a cool way where you're like, it's okay, little guy. Like, we're not going to take you off the wall.
We haven't forgotten about
it.
you.
Yeah, you can still party. Like, you're good.
Yeah.
And I think setting also really just helps you learn about movement, like we've been saying. And it also really helps you learn about reach. If you climb with other people on a home wall or a spray wall, I think you'll develop more compassion for people who might be smaller than you. And if you're short, then you'll probably get yelled at for setting scrunchy stuff, even though you have it harder than everybody else. So I think I hit all my setting bullet points there.
Nice. Cool.
What's your next tip?
My second tip is to, and again, this is for climbing on a spray wall at a gym or at home, wherever. Work on climbs that are hard for different reasons. I talked about this a little bit in the board episode, but I wanted to kind of build on it here because I think it, it applies, and I think it's an important concept. But yeah, set hard projects for yourself that fit your style perfectly. They're going to be inspiring. They're going to be sick. You're going to feel like a badass. You're going to get even better at the stuff you're good at. That's really cool. But also practice setting things that don't fit your style. You can have a friend set projects for you if you have a hard time escaping your strengths. Browse the Stoked app, find cool stuff that other people have made up. Yeah, I think it's totally fine to train to your strengths. I do like to do that, and I spend probably the majority of my time working on things that are directly related to my goals and climbing in my style. But it really goes back to one of the pitfalls from last time, which was I think people just get injured when they do too much of the same thing. So this is a really nice way to avoid that. And then one more thought on that. I actually just kind of stole this from Aiden Roberts. I recorded an extra with him, and I was like, I really like how you said that, because I've definitely done that, and I just like how he captured it. But he tries to set things, he'll want to work on something, like a certain type of move or something, and he'll try to set something, like for him, it might be a powerful move where he has to be pretty dynamic, which isn't his normal style. So he tries to set it without trying the moves, just staring at the wall, and then really tries not to tweak it unless it's just like totally fucked and like doesn't work at all. Because your first instinct, I do this all the time, like with the tension board, it's so easy to be like, ooh, that's way harder or weirder than I thought.
And then like dial it back.
Unbright that hold, like change it to this other one, like light up this other hold. But there's a ton of value in sticking with that idea that you had and just like trying to find a way to make it work. It can like lead to some pretty interesting stuff.
I feel like for project level climbing, that's definitely a really good tip. And it dovetails nicely with what I was saying earlier about like set the crowd pleaser, but then like go back to your idea and like make it fucked up like you originally intended. And I think for projecting, you might want to just go straight to. I see where he's coming from there, because it's like hard to get yourself to do the messed up version if you know that there's like an ergo option.
Yeah,
maybe. But I like to think of this as like setting chaotically. Like if I'm gonna set problems for the tension board, I don't know if this is just because I feel like I have like I'm like a D-list celebrity, so I have like minor reputational credit that I'm trying to preserve. But like, I want my climbs on the tension board to be like at least pretty good.
No, totally, I do this.
But on my home wall, I'm fine with this just being like fucked up.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? And I either don't
yeah.
give it a grade, or I grade it some obscenely hard thing so that nobody's interested in trying it.
Yeah,
because I really think those super chaotic sets, that's where I kind of get the biggest breakthroughs on a home wall, just because I have so much experience with like what I can do, and I'm confident with the way I can move when I come up with it. So I have to either try not to come up with it or let like my friends do it. On the home wall in Bend, my wife, there was a couple projects that my wife set where she just like didn't think about it too. She's like, I'm gonna set you a project. And then she just like smattered a bunch of holds, and they turned out like pretty sick. And I got big like technical breakthroughs on them, because when I first looked at them, I was like, that's impossible. That stuff can be so satisfying.
Yeah.
And the other thing that popped into my mind was during COVID, I built a home wall and my buddy Kevin built a home wall. And then we both had whatever the app was we were using. I think it was Eat, Pray, Love, which is another one. And I guess I should just say the third one I know, which I use now.
Love, maybe?
Eat, Spray, Love.
Yeah.
Not the book about pasta.
Yeah.
The other one I know is Retro Flash. I think those are the three main apps.
They're all kind of like the Stoked.
Same deal. Yeah. Me and Kevin both had Eat, Spray, Love, I think, and we like zoomed at one point. We like set each other a bunch of boulders and then like zoomed at one point and like tried each other's boulders, and like some of them totally didn't work because we didn't know the holds and stuff, but some of them were like legit boulders. And I think other people did that during COVID too, and I'm assuming it's kind of fallen out of favor a little bit since people are in person a lot more than they used to be, but that's a good way to get some chaos in your routine for sure. Just have people set stuff digitally.
Yeah, totally. Yeah, Wedge just did that actually. Like he had a session with Jim Pope where they just had patrons like set a bunch of problems on Jim's spray wall. And
wow. Okay. I thought you were going to say in the schoolroom, and I was like, oh, that feels like blasphemy.
Yeah, it was pretty cool. It was really interesting. Yeah. Because these people like haven't touched these holds, they're just like making their best guess.
I'm guessing Jim just like crushed most of it.
No, I mean, like a lot of them were like harder than you would think, if you just look at them, because they're like big loafy pinches and not jugs, but they kind of look like jugs. And anyway,
right.
Yeah. Cool. I think we've captured that one. Whose turn is it?
Me, but these are pretty minor. So a couple things about owning a home wall that I really remember from Bend, because now where I live, we went with a squat rack instead, because we have some close friends that live about 5 minutes away that have a spray wall. So still pretty close, but it's actually been shocking to me the difference between having a home wall in your garage and having a home wall at a friend's house 5 minutes away. Because there's just so much more that goes into getting all your stuff and putting it in the car and going to a friend's house, and
like
it's
making
different.
sure you have their permission and like kind of navigating the social side of it too. And yeah.
And even just like, don't forget your water bottle and like all that stuff, is like none of that's an issue when you train at home. So the best way to get to really squeeze everything out of your home wall is to just take advantage of it. And time-wise, like, do not underestimate the value of squeezing in like even a 30-minute session on the home wall. Like if you know how to warm up quickly, like a 30-minute session on something hard could actually be like a full day of climbing. If it's like really powerful climbing and you're just I'm speaking to the middle of the bell curve here, like average people, like that could be pretty taxing.
Yeah.
So like you and I had a tension board session. There was a couple like pretty hard things in there that we tried, I wouldn't need more than like 10 tries on those hardest things we tried in 30 minutes before I'm like, yeah, I'm pretty powered down actually.
Totally.
Maybe I could session again later in the day or something, but it doesn't take much. So understand the value of it, even if it's a really short session. And then to that same effect, probably the biggest thing I miss from having a home wall and bend is I would always session on it. Well, not session, but I was always warm up on it before I would go climb outside. And the end result was just my total board mileage, like baseline. The baseline just stayed like, it wasn't high, but it was just a little bit higher. And then in the off season, when I would kind of flip back to climbing on a board, I was in better shape for a board. Whereas now, living in Levy, even though that home wall is 5 minutes away, it's 5 minutes the opposite direction of the boulders. So I would never go there before climbing outside, which means my board shape right now is like in the shitter.
Right.
And that's a big...
That makes a lot of sense. I hadn't actually thought about that.
Yeah.
That's cool.
So now I want to build a wall in my garage again.
Yeah.
Of course.
Yeah. Nice.
What's your next tip?
Okay. Tip number 3 for me is circuits. Just circuits with an exclamation mark.
All right. Of different climbs or like circuits of moves on the wall?
I was thinking circuits of moves on the wall. Okay. That's another thing.
Like a 30 move circuit or a 40 move circuit.
Totally. I think that's another thing that's really, really uniquely valuable about a spray wall. It's getting harder and harder to do that sort of training in a commercial gym because setters, at least in the States, this is a trend I'm noticing is like they'll set with way lower density and they'll reset more often. And it's really hard to just make up link ups and stuff. And it's really hard to like tailor them to the right difficulty and style of holds and, steepness and all those sorts of things. So I think a spray wall is really good for that.
For sure.
I mean, I left this kind of open-ended on purpose. There's tons of protocols for whatever you want to work on with circuits. You could do bouldering on the minute or minute on, minute off if you're working on like aerobic capacity, all the way to like really specifically targeting in the number of moves of the thing that you want to do outside.
Yeah.
The Crimped app is really great for that. They're obviously a sponsor of the podcast, but you can download it for free and browse some of their different protocols and stuff for circuits and play around with those. One thing that I've had really great success with is getting really specific once I'm close to actually trying a project. And I've used circuits more for sport climbing. So the example that immediately comes to mind is Burlmaster. I was living in Bend. I was climbing at Smith a lot, and it was the season that I did Burlmaster, which is a 13C up in the Agrigoli. I tried it a lot in the spring, got really close, didn't do it, and then trained on my home wall over the summer, mostly focused on bouldering and strength and power and stuff. But as I got closer to the fall season, I just set a replica. And it wasn't the same holds and it wasn't the exact same moves, but it was like I tried to get a similar intensity of types of holds, roughly. I tried to match the pace. I matched the number of moves. I matched kind of the broken up sections. Like, there's a part maybe, I don't know, I can't remember at this point, but maybe halfway through the main section of hard climbing where you kind of get a jug and get to clip and you can chill for a second. And I, matched that. And it probably came out to be like a 13B 30 move circuit or something. And I tried to climb it 6 times in a session with 10 minutes rest in between. And I got to the point where I think I did that. And it was such a huge confidence boost. And, like seeing the progression just session after session was really cool. I think I even set an easier version and got to where I could do it 6 times and then made it a little harder and like did that whole process.
An amazing thing about a spray wall.
Totally.
And also you could not pick a better project to train for on a board or a spray wall.
Totally.
Burlmaster is literally like 4 boulder problems stacked on each other.
Yeah. a lot of things like that wouldn't work as well, for Smith or whatever. Just depends on your project. But yeah, it worked so well. I mean, I showed up in the fall and did it like first day, maybe.
Wow.
Something like that. Sick. It was really quick.
Yeah, that'd be a good one to like snipe like that, to like train for and snipe for sure.
Yeah.
So, well done. Good tactics.
Yeah.
I think the biggest takeaway for me, or something I would emphasize in that, is just not getting that specific with it until it's like the right time, or you have it, you know the route and you have it kind of picked out and everything.
I agree with that.
Because if you pull that trigger too early and you whiff it, like it's just a lot of it's not wasted energy. You're still rock climbing. You're still developing fitness and strength and stuff, but not nearly as satisfying if it doesn't work out. Because then you're like, ooh, this is too steep, or it was too pumpy, or like whatever, the holds weren't bad enough. I know that's something I've struggled with on some replicas that I've made, which is a slightly different topic, but similar.
Yeah.
I've gotten to the thing and I've been like, oh, my replica was like not as hard as I thought.
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
Or for the wrong reasons.
Yeah. I've got another bonus tip. Are you done with your tips?
I just have like a kind of kitschy tip, but
let's
I can
go.
do it.
What you
It's
got?
just when during COVID, we had our home wall and holds are just expensive. And so I made wood holds, and I think people probably know that you can make wood holds, but to me, the biggest bonus of making them was it's easier to make holds that protrude further from the wall out of wood than it is to buy like urethane or resin holds, because plastic holds just get really expensive as they get big.
Yeah.
And so I did a lot of like plywood glue ups. I think you've climbed on, you've
I remember
climbed on
that.
some of them. Yeah.
Yeah, those are cool.
And I am like not a good arts and crafts person. And I'm not like a talented woodworker or anything like that. I basically just got an angle grinder with like one of those like grindy things on it and just like went nuts on some plywood glue ups, and they turned out pretty good. So, and the other thing on that note is check like Craigslist and Facebook for they're called turning blanks, which are like the chunks of wood that woodworkers use to turn into bowls and stuff like that, like on a lathe. At some point during COVID, somebody closed like a wood shop in Bend, and I scored like a big bin of turning blanks for $50, and I made like all these like walnut and poplar holds for the wall. I think poplar.
Nice.
And there was like one other madrone or something holds for the wall.
What is what's like a starter set of tools, like woodworking tools that someone would need to make their own holds?
I had a workbench, so I just built I basically built a vise where I could T-nut in the hold. So then all I had to do was drill a hole, like build the blank, like glue the plywood together, so you have like a stack of plywood glued together. And I just cut it to a vague shape with like a circular saw. So I had a circular saw. And then drill a hole in it, so 7/16 drill bit, I think. And then you bolt it down, and then just take the angle grinder to it until it's like the shape you want, basically, and then sand it. So I guess that's kind of a lot of stuff, because you need an angle grinder and a circular saw.
You could probably, if you had like a jigsaw and like a Dremel, you could probably make a lot of sick holds.
Some of the best holds I made, I had like a plank of beech that was only like maybe an inch thick or 3/4 of an inch or something. And I just set my circular saw to I'm sorry, I don't know the woodworker terms. I'm sure somebody who knows how to work with wood is out there like, this guy's a chuckle fuck. But I set the circular saw to an angle and then like cut a bevel, I guess, down the plank. And I cut a few of them. And so I had holds that were at like, this one's like a 30-degree in cut. This one's like a 15-degree in cut. This one's like a 45-degree in cut. And then just cut them to different lengths, sanded them down, and put screw holes in them. And I probably made like 15 holds that way or something. And that was just a circular saw and sandpaper.
Nice.
And a drill to drill the holds. And those holds are some of the best holds I made.
Yeah.
And very bomber.
Nice.
Plywood kind of feels like should be shifty. I've never broken anything, but it's plywood.
Yeah.
So feels weird.
Should be. Plywood's pretty strong.
Yeah, I would hope so.
Nice.
Yeah. Wood holds pretty cool. What's your last tip?
My bonus tip is set foot moves.
Ooh.
Don't just do feet follow for everything.
Nice.
Feet follow is great. It can force some really interesting tension and movements, and that can lead to some cool things that you wouldn't do if you were just setting foot moves. But I think the practice of the movement you get and just the skill you get with setting actual footholds and foot moves is really helpful and can make things a lot more interesting, can really open up a lot of possibilities. You can work more on obviously footwork and tension and things. But yeah, like really, it really comes down to learning and noticing how much of a difference it can make to try the same hand moves with slightly different footholds. Or again, if you're at home, just like turning things a little bit. It's really crazy. I think it'll really help your footwork if you think about things like that. So I think that's probably more intuitive if you have a home wall, but I think people forget to do that in a spray wall gym setting.
Yeah.
But yeah, set foot moves for yourself.
For sure. And tracking feet, for whatever reason, like hard, steep climbing outside often doesn't have tracking feet as much as inside. I don't know if that's just the nature of the way rock turns out on a lot of, I guess some places like Rocky Mountain tends to have a lot of things where you stand on the same holds that you held with your hands a little bit more, at least in the moderate grades that I climbed when I was there.
No, I think you're right though. I mean, well, yeah, I think it's just hard to make footholds that stick out from the wall that are good enough to be useful for your feet, but aren't cheatable with your hands, right? Like that's kind of what it comes down to, but that happens on rock all the time.
Right. It's so common on rock that you're going to like have to hold a position for like 15 seconds while you fiddle your feet around. And that's like relatively common or relatively uncommon on boards and on spray walls and stuff. So it's a good point. And I think the most fun problem we did today on the tension board was a crux like foot move, that like float
like a goat.
Float like a goat.
I said that. Thanks, man.
I did not realize the float was like in the name and also okay. I got it.
Yeah, I'm psyched on that one. Yeah, that one was cool. It's all about like keeping tension on a foot as you get kind of extended and then floating your foot over on a bad sloper. Yeah.
Pretty fun.
And we will be right back. This episode is brought to you by Revival Climbing Coalition. As many of you know, I recently got a home wall installed at my house in Washington. It's my dream training setup, and Revival makes the adjustable climbing wall that my TB2 is mounted on. My Revival wall is 12 foot by 12 foot, but they make all sizes of boards. They make fixed angle and adjustable boards. Their adjustable boards go from 15 degrees overhanging all the way down to 70 degrees overhanging with the touch of a button. They also make foam landing systems. I got one of their landing systems as well, and I absolutely love it. It's super comfy to fall on, and I never have to worry about missing the pads or twisting my ankle by landing on the edge of a crash pad. I really admire this company. I recorded an episode with David and Tony, the founders, earlier this year in episode 222. And we talked about how Revival got started and what sets their products apart. The two of them installed my wall in just 2.5 hours. It blew my mind. The design is super elegant. They use a lot of engineered lumber, so their walls are more environmentally friendly than a lot of the other climbing walls I've seen. They look beautiful, and that also allows them to be less expensive than a lot of their competitors, which for homeowners is a huge plus. If you're a gym owner or a home owner and you're in the market for a training board, a home wall, or a landing system, you can learn more about Revival at revivalclimbing.com. Like I said before, they've got fixed angle and adjustable options, all different sizes. They can match any of the training systems out there as far as like the hole patterns in the wall. They're one of the most affordable options on the market, and their quality is really, really good. I am 1000% happy with my board. One more time, that's revivalclimbing.com to learn more. Be sure to reach out to those guys if you have questions. They're super personable and knowledgeable. And if you do reach out, be sure to tell them I sent you. This episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. I am a huge fan of therapy. It's helped me with having better boundaries around work. It's helped me build a healthy relationship with my girlfriend. It's helped me enjoy my climbing and feel more clear about what I want to do in climbing. Basically, it's a really helpful tool to do better at life. You can talk about anything, whatever you're struggling with or want to get better at. Your therapist is simply there to listen and help you find your own way. I go to therapy twice a month through BetterHelp, and nothing beats sitting down and talking with a professional who is there for no other reason than to listen and help. If you're thinking of starting therapy, give BetterHelp a try. It's entirely online. It's designed to be convenient, flexible, suited to your schedule. You just fill out a brief questionnaire to get matched with a licensed therapist, and you can switch therapists at any time for no additional charge and without any awkwardness. Discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit betterhelp.com/nugget today and get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/nugget. And now back to the show. Pitfalls.
I have 2 pitfalls.
Okay.
How many you got?
I have 3 plus a bonus.
All right. You better
I
go
should
first.
probably go first. Okay. My first pitfall is always trying only new stuff and having a lot of crap sessions. And this is kind of the inverse of my first tip. But I think there's some other points here to hit on that are important. I just think it takes time to get to know a new board and to have really high quality sessions. And if you're always winging it and just trying to like come up with stuff on the fly, in my opinion, you're always going to be compromised with the quality of your sessions unless you're like at an Adam Andra level of fluency with spray walls, which is aspirational. I think there's definitely like a skill element to coming up with stuff and remembering which holds you picked and like executing it and climbing well. And that's something that is worth practicing, but it's easy to see him do that on his YouTube channel and think that like, oh, I should just be coming up with new stuff every time I climb on this wall. But it's really hard. And
For sure.
it takes me so much mental energy. I don't know how to get the difficulty quite right. It takes some like tweaking and stuff. And again, for me, I think it's been really important to have that kind of iterative process with home walls or spray walls where I'm like, over the course of a training cycle, making my whole session like a little harder by mastering certain climbs and iterating on them and stuff. So
yeah, cognitive strain, real thing for sure. Like the number of times that I have had somebody over to climb on my spray wall and I'm just like rolling through climbs and trying to like show them the climbs and they're like fully overwhelmed, you know?
Totally.
Like it's really hard to have a good session.
You're looking at the stoked app, you're looking back at the wall, you look back at the
right.
app, you look back at the wall, you're like, oh shit, oh that foot, okay, yeah.
I mean, when I came over earlier this week, we were dinking around on this and I was like, oh, I'm gonna set something. And then I was like trying to set without the app. And if you guys haven't seen the tension board, it's like, it's really cool looking, but also a lot of the holds look the same, especially from below. Like without the lights, like it wouldn't work. Whereas with a spray wall, at least you have color.
Right.
You know? Like you really do, I think you really do need the lights for this board to make sense.
Yeah.
And so like with a spray wall, maybe you have like a bunch of different colors that might be helpful, but still, I guess like the big pitfall would be like, don't roll up to a new spray wall and be like, yeah, I'm just going to like get some volume in. Cause like everything is going to be pretty challenging. Especially if, you know, you have a job and you just worked or whatever, if you're climbing after work, like a lot of people do.
Right.
Yeah.
Nice.
So my pitfall, and there's a few ways to look at this, but the way I framed it is just not having the right mix of holds for the skill level. So I've definitely seen spray walls in gyms where they would be like a 6 spray wall for, you know, like a team training for the World Cup or whatever, but everybody's just walking by them to do like the cool V4s on the like barrel or whatever, you know what I mean? Like the wall is just obviously was built as like this would be a cool thing for the strongest people who climb in this gym. And that does make sense, but also it can do that and still allow like some other people to participate in it, you know? And similarly for like a home wall, most skill levels of climber are going to want to warm up. They're going to want to recover from injury. They're going to want to do like big, powerful moves and not just like death crimp on the holds. So like, if you know it's mostly going to be you climbing on it and that's really all it's about and you just want to get better at crimping, like, yeah, it totally makes sense to have a wall that's just splattered with crimps. But you should probably put some thought into like who's going to climb on this wall and like who you want to include. Because I think a spray wall, even more than a light up board, they can just be very exclusive and like othering. In a serious way, especially with the lack of lights. Like they're just hard to climb on. So maybe having at least a few holds, you know, and a few problems that are like meaningful for people who don't climb super hard, I think would be nice.
Nice. Yeah. And that can be helpful for you too, even if you're really strong. Like some days it's just, if you're training a lot or you've had a big break from the board and you're coming back to it after an injury or something, it's kind of nice to have some comfy jugs.
Definitely. Yeah. Both my board and bend and the board that I climb on here, like I've never regretted having buckets on the board. Like there's plenty of space on the board for hard holds too. It's not like there's probably on that board, there's probably like 30 holds that I would call a straight up jug. Like things that I can dead hang from with one arm without exerting effort. You know what I mean? It's not that many. There's like 500 T-nuts or something.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
In the end, it's not that much surface area. So pretty worthy investment.
Nice. My second pitfall is not keeping track of what you did in a session. If you're training on a spray wall, I think it's a uniquely good tool for progressive overload, like I've talked about. and building on things you've done. So the way to actually take advantage of that is to keep track of what you do. And that's, that is a general pitfall, I think, as far as training goes in general, but I think it's just a little harder to track what you did on a spray wall than some of the other things that we do as climbers. It's really easy to write down your hangboard numbers. It's easy to be like, cool, I did 3 V6s in the new set in the cave, but it's a little bit trickier to track what you did on the wall. So that's where like using some type of app is helpful, or I've had my highest quality sessions on a spray wall when I'm writing down the problems I did and also filming everything, like giving them names, filming everything, reviewing the climbs, trying to climb them better every session, and like impress myself with how good I look in the video. Let some vanity get in there if that's helpful, whatever. Just, yeah, I think it's kind of a game-changing tool for that, but it takes a little more like bookkeeping and work.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think
get the most out of it.
That dovetails nicely with mine, which is like, even more than, I know that we covered this in the board one, but I just feel like this bears repeating, and maybe I'll say it on every podcast I ever go on for the rest of my life. But even more than with a board, I think with a spray wall, because if it's a spray wall at a gym, it's driven by the community, which is probably even a little bit more spastic. Like with a TB2 or a moonboard or whatever, it is driven by the community, but at least you have the power of like a bigger community to kind of average things out a lot more. Whereas like a lot of smaller spray walls, you probably get people kind of monopolizing the setting a little bit, and you get like the couple of strong people who climb on it and do everything, and if those people are not being thoughtful or inclusive, then you're going to wind up with this situation where the board's grades are kind of wonky. And so like you combine that with the fact that there's no lights, it's usually really steep and powerful, just like it is with a board. I think it's just really easy to create a situation that can be dangerous. And so, as I said in the board one, like stopping when you power down is just such an essential thing with this style of climbing. But I think it's even more important with a home wall or a spray wall than it is with a board. It's really important in just about any kind of like high performance, high power climbing. But those are two scenarios where it's the most important for sure. And I think that if it's a home wall, that should play really nicely, because like the benefit of a home wall is the time management thing. So like I said, like get in, warm up, go hard, get out, And if you want to have your friends over and have a big session once a week, I think that's great. I do that too. But once a week, I don't have, I wouldn't try to have like 3 5-hour sessions on my board, because I'm just kind of asking for it at that point.
Yeah, that's all really great. I'm going to riff on that a little bit. This is off the cuff, but a frustration that I've had when I've used spray walls that I don't know very well. Like I ran into this in Wenatchee at the gym there. There's a pretty nice spray wall there. And I was doing a training cycle one summer when I was hanging around, staying at my folks' house. And I was so annoyed when I was trying to warm up because everything was so fucking sandbagged. Like I was just trying to climb V2s to warm up on this 40 degree or 45. And some of the folks that were setting were just completely out of touch with what V2 should be.
Right.
And it was just a good reminder for me to like, okay, I can scroll through this app and find climbs to do, but I need to start by trusting my eyes. Like look at the board, look at the holds, ask myself like, do I feel ready to actually do these moves right now? Or do I need to do a couple easy things? And maybe just don't even pay attention to problems when you're warming up.
Just rainbow.
Yeah. Just climb on comfy, nice things that feel appealing and walk your feet around on nice, comfy footholds and stuff like that. But
for sure.
Yeah, so that's kind of like a PSA for setters. Really try to be realistic about grades, because if you're sandbagging really easy stuff, like that could actually get someone injured.
Yeah, I mean, it's tough because I feel like if we mention this on a podcast, maybe somebody out there is like listening and they're that really changed their view. But I think in a lot of cases, it's not like someone's made a considered decision to really sandbag the grades.
Right.
They just are strong.
Right.
And they rip through the problem and they're like, that's V2. And, but if you're out there and we've made you think about it, then that's great.
And on the flip side, if you're a user, just, trust your eyes.
For sure.
Do what feels good.
For sure.
Give yourself like whatever you need to warm up. Don't worry about what the grades say in the app.
Yep. Good advice. Good advice for any venue of climbing, honestly.
Yeah. Okay. Is it my turn?
I think it's your turn for the rest of the podcast.
Okay, I've got one more pitfall and then one more kind of bonus riff thing that ties into what we've already been talking about a little bit. But yeah, pitfall number 3 is only having big blobby footholds. So this is probably, I mean, this could be for gyms too, if you're thinking about setting up a spray wall, if you're a root setter or whatever. But yeah, I mean, even if you are someone listening to this who just goes and wants to climb at the spray wall at your gym and you don't have, any powers, you're not a setter, you don't work there or whatever, talk to, like, if your spray wall doesn't have small footholds that are good for training, talk to the staff, maybe even offer to buy some screw-on footholds. They're not very expensive, and just see if the crew will put some scattered around the wall, like in between the holds,
Yep.
But yeah, don't make the mistake of, I mean, that's kind of what's challenging about commercial gyms, is that all the footholds are big and blobby, and it's really hard to get any footwork that's relevant or realistic for outdoor climbing. So if that's your goal, if you want to get better at outdoor climbing, yeah, get some little screw-ons, either set them yourself on your own home wall if you're at home, or maybe offer to buy some for the gym and donate them. And
I'd chime in and say I think the inverse is true. So I think like a mix.
Don't just have tiny little ones.
Definitely. Like
yeah.
Just as much as we have a bunch of jugs on the board that I climb on the most now, we also have a bunch of jug feet, especially on the bottom, on the kicker. And like, I like that Wenatchee spray wall that you mentioned as well. But one thing for sure is like the bottom few rows, at least the last time I climbed on it, were like all bad feet. And I think that's something that makes those V2s feel really hard, right? When it's just like nub feet for, even if you have a jug, like that's pretty tough, especially if somebody's climbing V2, they're going to find that super hard.
On like a 45, yeah.
Right. Yeah. Like even looking at the TB2, a board that goes up to like, I'm sure V14 or something, like the bottom row of feet,
there's a lot of
mostly jugs.
Yeah, there's a lot of really good juggy footholds there.
Not to just keep talking about the TB2, but it's right here. Sorry.
Yeah, and then my final bonus thing, I want to riff more about what am I trying to say here? Okay, my pitfall is not making your home wall cool, and I want to expand on that and just give you guys some tips. If you think that a home wall is totally unattainable, maybe it is. I mean, it's a total privilege to be able to have a home wall, but I have seen a lot of people get so creative and come up with ways to do it, even with like pretty like sparse, funds or circumstances or whatever. So I really encourage people to explore that if you haven't thought about it much before. And if you do, make it really cool. Like, do whatever makes it cool to you, paint it. A lot of people just like put wood up in their garage or in their, spare room or whatever. And that's fine. If you think it looks cool, then great. But a little paint can go a really long way for just like having a good vibe.
Yeah.
Doesn't take very long. It's not that expensive. You could do all one color for pretty cheap. Buy cool holds or make cool holds like you talked about that you're going to be psyched to climb on. Holds are really expensive, but you can make them out of wood, like we talked about. A pro tip for that too, and this is how I made my first home wall for $900. You can reach out to hold manufacturers and see if you can buy their cosmetic seconds, because every hold manufacturer is going to have like boxes and boxes of seconds that they can't sell. A little discoloration or a short pour or whatever. And they'll usually sell them at cost of materials. So you're just paying for whatever the urethane is.
Yeah.
So that could save you a lot of money.
Can I chime in?
Yeah.
When we had our home wall in Bend, my wife at some point bought a So Ill cosmetic seconds box, and it was like a grab bag. Like we didn't know what would be in the box. I can't remember how much it cost. But we had to pay shipping, and I think the shipping was like more expensive than the holds just because they're heavy, and it was like a ton of holds, and they're pretty sick. And I think to this day, I have no idea what was wrong with them. It almost felt like they put the wrong holds in the box. You know what I mean?
Right. Like functionally they're fine.
Yeah. I'm sure there was like something about the plastic that looked off to quality control, but to me for a home wall, I was just like, whoa, these are sick. Like, yeah, there's a nice like in-cut crimps that were really, really nice to climb on.
Nice.
Still climb on them all the time.
Nice. Yeah. Put a couch in your garage.
Yeah.
find a free one on Facebook Marketplace and put a blanket over it if it's gross, just like do whatever you can to make your home wall rad.
Yeah. And protect that space.
Yeah.
If it's a home wall and it's in like your garage or whatever, the same as if you have like a rack or whatever, like I know where, a lot of people listening to this are probably Americans, and Americans just have a lot of shit. And so our garages just pile up with shit, but protect that space. Even if you don't climb on it for a couple weeks, like got to really like focus on not letting that become storage. Cause the second it becomes a storage area, it's like you've made it such a hassle to climb on the board, and you've taken away like the most powerful thing of having a wall at your house.
Yeah, totally. I'm kind of I try to be a minimalist, but yeah, if you have, just get rid of stuff that you're trying to store. Just get rid of it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I've worked with a lot of climbers, so I know this is a struggle.
Yeah.
Like this is a thing that comes up for sure.
Get some lights, get some really good lighting. That can help a lot, especially if you have like a basement or cellar board. Brighten it up in there. Get some, decent speakers. That's not very expensive. Play some music in there.
AC.
AC can be really good, or fans. Yeah. Definitely get some good airflow. However you can, especially if you're living in a hot area. Find a way to make the landing okay. Old mattresses. Again, Facebook Marketplace, old crash pads that you don't want to take outside anymore. Another pro tip, or just hack, I guess, but gyms need to replace their flooring every once in a while. So that's kind of a lucky thing. It's probably not going to happen whenever it's most convenient for you. But I had some friends in Bellingham get like probably $2,000 or $3,000 worth of foam flooring from a gym for free, just because the gym was going to throw it away, and they offered to like drive down there. I think they had to like rent a U-Haul or something, but drove down, loaded up the U-Haul, came back, and now they have like a sick floor for their moon board. Nice. And it's rad.
Minor thing, but while we're just talking about home wall maintenance, because I guess I didn't think of this earlier. When we moved from Bend to up here, and our friends built the wall up here, and we put our holds on it, I rented a pressure washer from Home Depot. I think it was like $20 to rent it for the day, and cleaned all the holds, ours and theirs, and it was like absolutely worth it to do that for the price.
Nice.
I mean, if you own a pressure washer, it's probably even easier, but so much nicer than trying to clean your holds. I don't know if anybody's ever done that, taken the hold off the wall and cleaned it and then put it back on to try to send your project at home. A pressure washer is the way to go.
Nice. Yeah. Yeah, that's pretty much it. I mean, if you need some inspiration, we talked about wedge earlier. I find it so admirable, like what those guys are making do with. Some of those guys in the UK, and they're like 6 foot tall sellers or whatever.
They're thriving, dude.
Yeah,
you say they're making do, but I think they like genuinely enjoy that shit. They like
enjoy it. They're killing it. They're climbing super hard. Like a lot of the strongest climbers coming out of the UK are just training in their basements in these like pretty cramped little rooms with home walls. And I get a lot of inspiration from that, because I think it reminds me that like it doesn't have to be fancy.
I think Wedge might be the best climbing YouTube channel too.
Yeah, it's sick.
It's incredible.
Shout out to
color correction is like
Sam Lawson. I know.
Insanely good.
Yeah. Yeah. So yeah, get creative. And the barrier to entry is, I think, nowhere near as high as people think.
Yeah. That's an important thing to think about. I remember in our first Nugget episode, we talked about the idea of quantum leaps, like things you can do in your climbing that kind of take you out of that grind to slowly get better and like bump you up a level. And I think learning how to climb on a spray wall definitely could be one of those if you're at the right point. Building a home wall absolutely can be a quantum leap. Like, and I'm kind of realizing living where we are, we talked about this earlier, just having a home wall at my house instead of having a home wall 5 minutes away could be another quantum leap for me, like now where I'm at again. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like it's that big of a deal. Don't underestimate that,
Yeah.
If climbing is important to you, $1,000 is a pretty low price to pay to maybe get you.
Right. I mean, exactly. Like that was the point I wanted to make. I mean, that is in a lot of places less than a 1-year membership at your gym.
It's absolutely true.
It's going to pay for itself pretty quickly. And things have changed. I mean, my wall was $900, but that was, I don't know, that was like 7 or 8 years ago. So certainly lumber and wood are more expensive now. Mm-hmm. But yeah, that was a pretty sick wall. It was we were renting the house. I designed it and built it to be freestanding, so we didn't have to like worry about any of that. It was 16 feet wide. The 40 was like, it was an 8-foot tall ceiling, so the 40 was like 10 feet of climbing, I think.
Not bad.
And yeah, I got a lot out of that.
And a lot of the new boards were maybe off topic, but a lot of the new boards don't have kickers,
right,
for short garages. So I was kind of surprised I have a short garage here and I could fit a TB2 because it doesn't have a kicker. Like not this one, but the next size down would fit.
Like the 10-foot tall.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I have a very short garage. I was like, whoa, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Pretty sweet.
All right. That's everything I got.
Yeah, good stuff. Good stuff. You yoinked my other Pitfall. So
I did.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Bye, everybody.
Thanks, y'all.